You know I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, our guest today, just like some of our previous guests, can be seen only on SNY. And we got a great recommendation to have her on today. So why don't you tell our loyal listeners and viewers who we have with us?
Yeah, it was another recommendation, and as you're right, you could see her nightly on SNY. She's a former sideline reporter. She was at Fox Sports and AT&T Sportsnet in Houston doing sideline reporting for the Rockets before she was at SNY. But now you can catch her nightly on SNY. We're really, really excited to have her on. Miss Michelle Margaux. Michelle, good morning. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well, other than what we discussed previously. I'm having a really bad hair day because I got a really bad haircut. But other than that, I'm good.
We could hardly tell here. Hair looks fine.
That looks like that's a bad hair.
Yes, thank you, and thank you so much for having me. By the way.
So you mentioned hair, and this is something that we never really get to the inside scoop here. When you were showing up to SNY or any TV place, are you coming with like your hair in a bun, no makeup, and then you let them take care of it? Or are you coming in prepped and getting things looking nice before you're heading into the makeup room?
This is a really good question, and it's totally subjective. Every station/network I've been at has been different. The talent does what they want. So, for example, Maria Marino at SNY, she'll go in sweats and then she'll do her makeup when she gets there. A lot of people do that. Especially in local news, a lot of people do that. I come ready and I freshen up for sure. Especially because my commute's like 2 hours long. But I've always come in my heels and come in my dress or my work pants or whatever it is. I would say the only thing different with this job that any other job is I don't come in my heels. I'll bring them because I don't want to run through Penn Station late at night in my heels.
Definitely not what you want to do. Now, we want to get through your whole career here, but because I mentioned at the top, the first time you worked with Eamon McEnany, who was a friend of our show, and he said only on SNY. Were you startled, or what were your thoughts on that when he was going to commercial break?
So I mean, I knew he did it because I watched. It is a little louder than the usual toss to break, but it's Eamon and we love it, and it wouldn't be Eamon without it. So it startled me the first time I heard it as a viewer because I didn't know he was going to do it. But then after that, it was like, oh, that's Eamon's thing.
No doubt about it. So it's a staple here with New York sports, but you are a San Diego girl. You spent some time in Florida and Texas. Have you gotten used to these brutal New York winters yet? No.
If anyone's listening to this and not watching this, I'm shaking my head. No, I have not gotten used to it. I probably will never get used to it. I didn't understand that I had to shovel snow off my car the first time. And I don't know. I when I saw people's windshield wipers sticking straight out, I didn't understand. There's just a lot to unpack that people don't understand. Is a whole process. And it takes, the first thing I said to my fiance, who's from New Jersey, I said, I don't understand how you guys get anything done in the winter because it takes so much extra time every day. Whereas in San Diego, you hop in your car at any time of day, at any day of the year, and it's just like you just get in, you go. And it doesn't take an extra 45 minutes to shovel your driveway and to shovel the snow off your car and then to drive. With that said, it's not as bad as I imagined it to be, but I heard this was a really bad winter, and that's why it's been so
last year 2020 and even 2019 was very mild. We barely had any snow, but it came back to haunt us here in 2021 where it's just total blizzards and just nonstop. I mean,
are you ready for a stat? Are you ready for a Lonnie Quinn stat?
Lonnie Quinn, roll up the sleeves.
Like a couple nights ago, apparently the 5 snowiest winters, the least snowiest winters that we've ever had were followed by the 5 snowiest winters that we've ever had. So that's
so 2020 was the least snowy, and then 2021 follows with the most snow.
Yep.
So I remember when I was the sideline reporter for the Tampa Bay Rays, our first away series was at Yankee Stadium, and it was April, and it got snowed out. The first day got snowed out, and then I think the second day was like rain or something. And I remember thinking, it's April. Like, it's April. It's not January.
Yeah.
So why are we experiencing this? And then, like you said, last year wasn't that bad. So by April, it was pretty warm. And then they decided to flip that upside down this year, I guess. But
Yes. No, our mutual friend who recommended we have you on the show, Adnan Verk, he is always complaining on TV about him shoveling. You know what? When you make the big bucks, Adnan, you're going to have a big property and you're going to have a lot to shovel. So
Right.
I don't know how sorry I feel about him, but he said we had to get you on the show, and I think he was a little tongue in cheek about this, but he said, "Ask Michelle about how I'm her mentor." So what are your thoughts on Adnan Verk being a mentor?
Tongue in cheek, no. He absolutely is a mentor. He's a wonderful mentor. He's first and foremost, take the mentor stuff out of it, one of the most talented individuals I have ever met, worked with. You don't realize it at home. And I've always said, when someone, hates on Twitter or sends me messages or whatever, says, so-and-so so bad at their job, it's making your job look easy, which means you're doing a good job. Because if someone else thinks that they can do it, that means that you're doing a good job, if that makes sense. But Adnan makes it look so easy. And I've been there behind the scenes when it's not easy. And he is so good and so talented and so smooth. I actually hate him for it. So go ahead and tell him that. I envy him for being able to just do whatever comes his way and handle it with grace. Yes, he actually has totally been a mentor for me. He has great advice. He listens to me nonstop when I'm being neurotic, and he's a wonderful human being, super funny.
And he has you on MLB Now with him, so I'm sure that was a cool experience.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. And he's a good guy. He really is.
Adnan, one of his best skills is that while I'm watching him on TV, he'll be texting me, and I'm like, "Are you taping this?" He's like, "No, we're live." So anytime you think about to know Adnan, if you're showing B-roll or something, he's texting people, he's on Twitter tweeting people, and I got to work with him firsthand on his show on Change Up a few years ago, which was hysterical to talk to Adnan. But he said you are a reading fanatic. He said you love reading books. So are you more of an audiobook reader or a hardcover reader, or is he just making things up? Yeah, he was like, you got to ask Michelle about her love of books.
Ronan Farrow. So.
Oh, okay. So I wouldn't say I'm like an avid reader. Maybe more than the average millennial.
Well, if you read one book, then that's more than anybody else that's a millennial.
Yeah, I interesting that he thinks that. Who is he talking to who doesn't read that much? Yeah, there is a book that's really phenomenal. Do you know who Ronan Farrow is?
No.
I do. I don't think Nick does.
Wow, Nick called out. Shots fired.
Listen, the last time I read a book was probably in college, and I've done just fine since then.
So Ronan Farrow is Mia Farrow's son / Woody Allen's son. And he's an investigative journalist, really big on fact checking, and he wrote a book called Catch and Kill, which was the by far easiest read I've in the last 2 years. I read it in 2 days. And that's saying a lot because I do not read. That's why I'm confused. If you called me an avid reader, I don't read things that quickly.
He must have saw you with a book one time, and then he's just like associated you with reading.
I'm one of those people. Okay, I have a pet peeve that when people talk about their dreams, like nobody cares about your dreams. And when people talk about books that they've read and you're like, oh, great, someone telling me all about the book that they've read. And I definitely do that. Like if I'm reading a good book, everyone around will know. Yes. So I think maybe I must have been reading a book and I said something to Adnan about it and he was like, okay, this girl reads.
There you go. So you grew up in San Diego, or you went to college in San Diego rather. And when did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in journalism? Was it before college or when you got to the University of San Diego?
I knew when I was 8 that I wanted to be a news anchor. I had this trifold dollhouse that was like life size, kind of came up to here. And I had this pseudonym named Sally Kelly. I don't know why. That's just the name I chose. And every night I would read the news to my mom. So I knew from a very early age that I wanted to do it, but I considered other things and I dabbled in other things in college because so many people told me that it was super competitive and that I had no chance. So I tried to hedge and look for other things just in case, but it was always journalism. I mean, ask anyone. People still to this day that knew me in high school were like, you know, you said you wanted to do this. You did it. I'm like, yeah, like that. There was no plan B. That's what I wanted to do, and there was nothing that was going to stop me. So, from very early age, I didn't know I wanted to do sports until I was about 19.
Right. So, were you looking at any other school in San Diego? Because obviously, when people are on the West Coast, they obviously tend to look at SC as one of those communication schools. A lot of the connections seem to come out of there. So what was it like being in college? How was your internship experience like? What did you do while you were there and immediately out of college that helped you out career-wise?
How much time do you have? I did not get into SC, and I was upset about that. And so to this day, I go for the Bruins because I am mad that I didn't get into USC.
Wow. I would have hit a sore spot.
Yeah. Did someone tell you that?
No, I kind of assumed because SC is just a very, very big school and a lot of communications people tend to come from there. And I know with Fox out on the West Coast and LA and stuff and the connections that they have to college sports and the Pac-12 and stuff like that, SC is just monstrous school. So I'm sorry I brought up an old
Listen, USC is the last school I would even consider because I just couldn't stand their college football days with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart.
Oh, okay.
Can't stand them.
Because, yeah, Annenberg School is a really good journalism school, and that's why I wanted to go in because USD did not have a journalism program. I majored in communication, which was more like, it wasn't even really media studies. It was like family interpersonal communication, and then I minored in political science. So it was a tough road from that angle. They still don't have a journalism program, which one of these days when my journalism career is over, I'm gonna do my best to start a program there because it's so necessary. Every time I say I went to USD, people go, "Oh, Trojans, USC." I'm like, "No, USD." My dad always calls it University of Spoiled Daughters because I'm his spoiled daughter. I'm not spoiled. I did a lot of internships actually. So that's why I said, how much time do you have? The first one I did was, so here is my biggest piece of advice to Gen Z or anyone who wants to do journalism. You cannot expect things to happen without going after them, because the first internship that I had, it was a news station in Sacramento. Obviously I was in San Diego for college, and it was between my freshman and sophomore year, but my college wouldn't let me take an internship without compensation. So I either had to get credit for it or I had to get paid for it. And my college didn't allow me to get credit for it until after my sophomore year. And this was after my freshman year. So I enrolled in a community college in Sacramento in order to get credit in order to do the internship in Sacramento. It was a news internship, but that's how I discovered my love of sports journalism. But I cannot stress it enough. Like, if plan A doesn't work, there's plan B. If plan B doesn't work, there's plan C. And you just gotta try and fit a square peg in a round hole sometimes. And thankfully I did that because it made me discover my love for sports journalism.
Yeah.
That was my first internship. I don't know if you want me to go on.
Well, you had a bunch of internships after that, and usually that's how it works with journalists. You're able to do stuff with your school, with USD, and then you did Fox Sports, which must have been really cool, and you're getting really into sports there, and from there, obviously, you're probably compiling your tape or your reel here. So what was the process like, when graduation was coming up? Sending that stuff out to different places, and how did you end up auditioning for or just landing your first role out of college?
So this is another square peg in a round hole story. I I didn't have, and you at University of San Diego was by far the best university I could have chosen. So this is no hate on them, but I didn't have a lot of help because not a lot of people went into journalism after USD because there was no program for it. So what I did was, instead of like an intelligent human being, instead of using an Excel spreadsheet, I used a piece of paper and a pen, and I wrote down every single designated market area that I wanted to work in. So if you guys know what DMAs are, like number 1 is New York, number 2 is LA. There's 209. Number 209 is like Juneau, Alaska. So it's based on the TVs per household in the market. And I went through and I wrote down every single market that I wanted to work in, within reason. So I didn't put New York and LA. I put, Palm Springs and smaller markets. And I looked up every single news station in those markets and wrote that underneath. And then I wrote down the news directors of every single one, reached out to every single one that I wanted to work in. So if, say there's 3 or 4 stations in every market, times I probably did 100 markets. So like 300, 400 emails. And I personalized every single one. And, maybe 3% got back to me, and maybe 1.5% had jobs open. And the one that I ended up getting was in Corpus Christi, Texas. They did not have a job open. And they said, we don't have any sports openings. We'd love to fly you out. We can have an interview, but there's just no openings right now. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And so I went out there and I interviewed for no position. And then about a month later, I followed up and I said, hey, I've graduated. And I was freaking out at this point because like no one wants to graduate without a job. And it had been, and I feel so much for the people who graduated during COVID, because that was probably not fun. And he basically said, we don't have anything open. Thanks for following up. If you want to work here, we can make a hybrid position where you can kind of do news and sports. I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I went and I did news for the first year, and then there's weekend sports anchor left, and I transitioned into that role. And that's how my first sports stuff came about. So it was not an easy process. It wasn't like there was a job opening and I applied and I got it. And that's what I think a lot of people expect to happen. And it's just not that simple.
Yeah, they always say to write down your goals. There's something magical about putting your thoughts and ideas pen to paper. It seemed like that worked for you. It seemed like you were able to get something very quick out of college. I don't think people are as nearly as fortunate as you are. I think a lot of people kind of have to do a little more soul searching and kind of bouncing around before they find a spot. But I wanted to ask, and we've asked people who have come on in the past, do you currently have an agent? Did you have somebody else assisting you in this process along the way as you've kind of gone around, you bounced around, you started in Corpus Christi and you've gone to different locations and you worked for a couple different companies doing some anchoring, doing some sideline reporting here. So do you have an agent? And if you do, did you find it helpful?
I do have an agent, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, actually. I think I found my very first agent after I'd gotten my job in Corpus Christi. And I don't think I needed one that young. I really don't. Or that early on, I guess, not young, but early on in my career. And it's very hit or miss. I've heard a lot of people not happy with their agents. I've heard a lot of people very happy with their agents. I think agents have a really tough job, especially in the market that we're in right now. I do have an agent. I love him. We just started working together, and I think that it depends on the person, because to me, nobody will represent you better than yourself. Because how could they? You have 100% of your time to represent yourself, whereas this person might be putting you in a group of 40 people, and so you get 1/40th of their time. So I think it's challenging in that capacity. I definitely think agents are helpful later on in your career when you are negotiating a contract, because you never want to be in a weird place with your employer. And I don't know, money's a weird topic. So I think it's necessary when you get to the level of like really negotiating money. Putting people in jobs, it can be helpful when they have a lot of knowledge and context. You know, if they have one client that's leaving a job and before that job even hits the market, they can fill it with another client. Yeah, I think it's totally subjective. I know it's probably not the answer that you wanted, but
No, it's interesting. Everybody
think it's
has a different
100%.
opinion. So we like to hear that stuff because it's very difficult to jump markets. And you're in Corpus Christi and you're making the move back to San Diego. You got a great job with Fox Sports. How did that opportunity come about for you? And also, you were there for 2 years, which in the TV industry these days is a long time. So tell us about your time there in San Diego.
oh, sometimes I wish I stayed there forever because San Diego it has my heart through and through. I'm getting married in San Diego. That's where I went to college. It's the best. I had interned at Fox Sports San Diego, and I had met with the executive producer of Fox Sports San Diego, who's now in Detroit. His name's Jeff Bile. He's another wonderful mentor of mine. And at the end of my internship, I was, I don't know, maybe 20. And I brought my laptop like an idiot. Who brings their laptop to lunch, like to show your reel? Instead of a flash drive or a link, I just brought my whole laptop and was like, here's my reel. And I said, I'm ready. Whenever there's an opening, I'm ready. And he said, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, I am. I genuinely thought I was. Like, I had the confidence and thought, I know I can do this. He was right. I was wrong. I was not ready. I probably would have fallen flat on my face. And he said, you need to start in a small market. You need to get your mistakes out. You're not ready for sideline. And so I was like, all right, like I'll prove him wrong. And I went to a small market. And every time I updated my reel, I sent it to him and I said, what do you think? Like, should I move? It wasn't even like, hey, is there something open? It was like, hey, this is the order that my clips are in. Do you think it's a good order? Do you think I should put this first? And then he just basically called December of 2015 and said, the job's yours if you want it. We have an opening. And I nearly died because I just didn't think that I was going to leave Corpus Christi and get back to San Diego as quickly as it happened. And to do Major League Baseball was obviously incredible. So that's how that happened. I think he just watched how hard I worked and how quickly I worked and thought, okay, I'll give her an opportunity. And I'm really glad he did. I'm glad he took a chance on me because I don't know where I'd be if he didn't.
So as you're molding what you're doing on air and kind of honing your craft, finding your own unique voice, I know it's hard, but from what we've seen over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, I think the sideline reporter has become such an important, unique, and standout part of the broadcast. And that includes people like an Erin Andrews, right? For an example, she's always one of the first people who always comes up in these discussions. You look at somebody like Rachel Nichols, and she took being that reporter and she turned it into an on-air anchor position and something even more.
Look at Kevin Burkhardt.
With ESPN and the Jump.
Kevin Burkhardt was great with the Mets, and then he's the
Absolutely.
star.
So how hard is it seeing those types of people do what they do and to not say to yourself like, okay, I'm going to take maybe something that this person does and I'm going to incorporate it into what I do. How hard is it to look at other people who are successful, who already done this and take stuff that they do while also not necessarily losing yourself and being unique to yourself? How hard is that to do?
Very difficult. And I think that's in any avenue of life, not just our industry. I always say comparison is the thief of joy because you will never be truly happy if you're constantly comparing because you're not going to have everything that everybody else has. And personally, so people argue that sideline reporting is becoming obsolete. I think the job of a sideline reporter is very important because you're the liaison between the fans and the players and the coaches, et cetera. I always say that sideline reporting is the hardest job to do well, but the easiest job to do poorly because it is easy to stand up there and take a nugget from the press conference that everybody else has and say it on the broadcast. But with this day and age with social media, that has been tweeted probably 30 times by the time the broadcast actually airs. And so you have to have information that the analyst doesn't have because they can do it from the booth. You have to have information that the beat writer doesn't have because he can write about it or tweet about it. So again, it's the easiest job to do poorly, but the hardest job to do well. And so, yeah, in some sense, some sideline reporters are becoming obsolete because they're not providing any new information. But in other ways, they are the most important job because you are literally getting information that nobody else can get in the time that you're getting it. So that did not answer your question and how it compares to looking at other people's careers. But I just think that the best of the best parlay it into something different, like Rachel Nichols has done.
Yeah, we had Tina Savassi on a little while ago too, and she I think more so bounced around a little more than you did here. You did all your bouncing around at the beginning, and now you kind of come to New York, and hopefully we're going to have you here and doing stuff on SNY, or at least in the New York market, and maybe for some time. But we did have Tina on, and Tina is the definition of a workaholic. I mean, when we had her on, it was work related. She told Nick and I some very personal stories pertaining to her personal life and decisions and choices that she had made along the way to do some sacrifices for her career. So I also wanted to ask you, how hard is it for you having that personal life, and have you had to make some sacrifices here along the way? Again, I know it hasn't been too much time since you graduated college between then and now, but there are sacrifices in your life that you've had to make, or challenges that you've had in your personal life come about here all the way up until your time here before you got to New York.
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I mean, for the first 5 years of my career, it was go, go, go. I had moved like 5 times in 5 years, and each one was out of state within, at least 900 miles of each other. Some of them were 3,000 miles. And I think especially when you're a sideline reporter, you live the life of a ball player. And so you are not, you don't make as much as a ball player. So let me get that straight, but you definitely are on the road as much, and you are almost working just as much, if not more, than a ball player, because you are preparing the whole morning, and then you get to the field when they get to the field, and then you're working through the game, and then you're working after the game, and you're doing social media, etc. So there was just no time for anything. And I wouldn't say the sacrifice was intentional, but it definitely takes a toll. And I remember distinctly, I visited my father, who lives in Sacramento, and we were playing the A's. I was with the Rays, and we were in Oakland. So I rented a car and I drove up, and at dinner, all I could talk about was work, and I was just going off. And he said, for the first time I had ever heard him ask, he said, how's your love life? And I was like, what? Excuse me? And he's like, well, how's your love life? I feel like you're putting all your eggs in the career basket and you're not really diversifying. And I was like, excuse me, I feel personally attacked right now. But also, for the first time ever, he was worried that I was going to die alone at the end of the day, or at the end of my life, because all I had done was make as many sacrifices as I could for my career. And I was putting myself first all the time. And I wasn't allowing anybody in because really he raised me that way. He told me, be financially independent. You never want to have to depend on someone else for your money. And so that's what was ingrained in me from a very young age, was to build a career for myself. And that's what I did. And of course, your dad's never really happy, right? So I think that kind of dawned on him. And then it dawned on me that, like, okay, maybe I should start living my life outside of work a little bit. So I worked so hard to a fault that I wasn't making decisions for anything other than my career. And now I'm engaged, obviously. So I think that has changed a lot. And I'm very fortunate that my fiance is super understanding, and he works in medicine. So he'll be able to go wherever my career goes. And so I'm thankful for that.
It's obviously worked out for you. Recently engaged. Congratulations on that.
Congratulations.
Now you stay in the Fox Sports family, but you head to Tampa Bay and you get the sideline reporter job with the Rays. Again, interested in what the process was like for that switch? And also, was it challenging going to your that spring training and making relationships with the players and staff to be able to build that backbone and foundation to get good stories throughout the season?
Yeah. I always feel like I'm the new kid because again, I've moved so much and I have a very hard time saying no. So when there's a job opportunity that could make me more versatile than the last, I will always take it because I always want to make myself as I say scarce as possible. Scarce is a weird word because it sounds like there's nothing there, but scarce as unique and different and one of a kind as possible. And so I didn't want to leave San Diego, but I knew I had to because I knew that I was going to get more opportunities in Tampa Bay. And same thing when I left Tampa to go to Houston and now Houston, New York. So it was a challenge, but it wasn't anything that I wasn't used to. Being the new kid, having to learn everyone's name and just trying to learn the way of the organization. Every organization I've been with has been completely different than the last. So that means the Astros were very different from the Rockets. The Rockets were very different than the Rays. The Rays were very different from the Padres. And I think the Rays made it very easy. They treated me like I was part of the family. So much so that they gave me a spot in the players lot at Tropicana Field. So I was very thankful for that. They made the transition very easy. And also the job was very similar. I wasn't changing jobs. Going from MLB to NBA was much, much more difficult than it was to go from Padres to Rays.
Yeah, I could imagine. And you're in Florida for that season, and then you love the no state income tax, so you go to Texas, staying over there, getting crushed now in New York. I could imagine. But what was the biggest differences between doing sideline reporting for baseball versus basketball?
Oh my God, everything. The schedule. Everyone said, "Oh, the NBA is going to be so much better because you only play a couple times a week," and they were wrong. I don't know who thought that was better. Going from one city to the next every single day at weird hours in the night is not fun. I very much missed being in a city for 3 days and then going to another city for 3 days and not switching time zones 3 times a week. Plus, you don't have practice for MLB, but NBA, you go to shoot around and practice. So there was a lot more to cover and unpack from that standpoint. The biggest difference to me was the schedule and also the league. The league is covered totally differently. I mean, NBA is just, it's covered globally, and Major League Baseball really hasn't gotten there yet. So it's just a different sport altogether. It's a much faster paced sport. Both I absolutely loved. I loved everyone I met in both sports, but they're just different.
So I wanted to ask about your note taking and your prep too, because some people prefer to do everything on their own. Maybe they have their own handwriting. Maybe they carry their laptop around everywhere like you do, and they have everything set up. I want to mention Tina again, and we had Jenny Dell on, and everybody has different methods. So when they work. So what do? Do you have like note cards? Do you bring around your tablet or your iPad around everywhere? So is there a specific way that you do it, or has it always been in conjunction with your coworkers and your teammates?
So unlike Adnan, when I have a broadcast, it's a little different in the studio, but when I was doing sideline, I didn't look at my phone the whole game. Sometimes my producers hated it because they couldn't get a hold of me for some reason. Or another, but I don't like looking at any technology. I think it's distracting. I refuse to get an iWatch or an Apple Watch or whatever it's called because I don't want something popping up that I don't want to see or read at the time that I'm about to go on air. And so I dread the day that there are no paper scripts in the studio because I swear by them. And I write on them and I highlight them. I don't use tablets. I don't bring my laptop to work.
So you're old school. I like that.
So you went from bringing your laptop everywhere around the internship.
No, I didn't even bring it everywhere. I only brought it to that lunch because I didn't know how else to show him my reel, which looking back, I mean, he probably didn't think anything of it, but it was like, I don't know.
That's just like one of those things for you, I guess. You put your head to the pillow at night and you're like, oh my gosh, 7 years ago, I throw my life.
Yes. Welcome to my life and overthinking. Yes.
But I like it. I mean, I feel like I'd be the same way. I'd have to be locked in the zone. I mean, too many distractions coming in, and God forbid you get bad news about something else. That would just rip you out of the broadcast. So that's definitely, I like the way that you're thinking there. Now I got to ask you about James Harden. Why are the Rockets retiring his number already? I mean, this is just absolute ridiculousness. I mean, was he really that loved there by the fans and the organization?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it's weird. I saw a quote, and you never know, things that could be taken out of context. I saw a quote from Harden the other day that said something like, "I've always had this leadership. Just this time I'm getting recognized for it," or something about being in Brooklyn. And I thought that was weird because I felt he had a decent relationship with the Rockets organization. I mean, obviously they're retiring his number. So yeah, he was very loved, and I think he was often misunderstood. I do. I think, I think people need to give him a little bit more grace.
Certainly can see that. Now you make the move to the Big Apple in December of 2019, which an all-time great month, as Joe will know, because that's when I got married. But
Congrats!
Thanks. What was the process like there to apply to that type of role, and was there any sort of audition process?
There was an audition process, and there was no role. Again, I cannot stress it enough. People just apply for open jobs, and when they don't get them, they just sit in their own misery. And to me, it's so obvious to go after things that might not be available at the time, but will be created for you. SNY. So my dad's dad was law partners with Bill Shea of Shea Stadium.
Wow.
And so Nets have always been very important to my family, my dad's side of the family. My dad grew up with box seats all the time in Shea Stadium and has a Tom Seaver baseball in our house. So there's always been a little bit of that in my blood, but it never dawned on me to like, I want to work there. It was kind of like my dad got really sick in 2018, which is interesting that you said the whole, like, you don't want to get bad news on a text when you're working. And that was like my whole 2018. And finally, it was kind of like, I feel really proud of myself when I know I'm doing something that is connected to my family. And I love New York. I've always loved New York. On my Facebook statuses, which is so embarrassing, by the way, I don't know if you ever have your memories pop up. It'll say like, Michelle is so bored. Og. And I'm like, what? Why did I think that was okay to write on my Facebook status? But I keep looking back and it keeps saying, like, 13 years ago, Michelle belongs in New York, period. Or like, Michelle can't wait to go to New York, period. Like, there was this drive in me that I really felt like I belong in New York. And so when it seemed like a possibility or probability, there was a no-brainer. And it's very special to me to hopefully get to cover some Mets this season in some capacity, because it's important to me.
Yeah, manifest destiny there, getting to New York. And you mentioned earlier how tough it is to be a silent reporter. I can only imagine how 2020 was when you're not even meeting with the players. You're over Zoom with everybody else. And I'm sure if times were normal, we would have saw you down in Port St. Lucie doing some games here, because we're only getting 4 games on SNY this year, or 5 games, which kind of sucks, but looking forward to the Mets season. Now, got to ask you this question here, because Joe and I know what the proper answer is, but if there was a movie or a television show about you, young Michelle, taking off the young Rock here.
Don't ask me this.
Who would play you? And if you don't know the answer, Joe could tell you the answer, because it's a no-brainer.
You know it?
Yeah, but let's see what you think first.
Wait, hold on. You know the answer for me?
I think it's a no-brainer when you're looking at this actress, and I think it's going to be very, very similar here.
If it's not Kate Beckinsale, I don't want to hear it. Unless this woman is a 20 out of 10, I don't want to hear it.
Some people would say she's
probably more than a 20.
Some people say she's pretty wonderful.
Wonderful? Is this a pun?
She's a wonderful woman.
Wonder Woman?
Yes.
Who plays Wonder Woman?
Gal Gadot.
I don't look anything like her.
There's some resemblance there, I think.
I see a little
She
resemblance.
is gorgeous. I will take that. I mean, listen, I don't tell her that you think we look alike, but I'll take it. No, so she's not an actress, but one person that I really, really respect, and you can go back to the Ronan Farrow Catch and Kill, is Monica Lewinsky, but she's not an actress.
That'd be interesting.
She wouldn't play me in a movie, but she is someone that I've read her autobiography. I've listened to many podcasts. I follow her on Twitter. She's the best follow on Twitter. She's so funny. And so I would say that's someone that I love, that's out of the norm. That's not like, Beyonce or somebody that everyone loves. But Gal, how do you say Gal Gadot? Gal Gadot?
Gadot.
Doe.
She's got the whole Gadot. You got the whole Margaux thing going on. It works.
Yeah. I mean, might as well just put me in with Margot Robbie then too. Let's just.
There we go. We could do the new. Yeah, she could be your side character. Yeah, but it's your movie, so it's up to you.
Blonde hair, blue eyes. We're the same person.
So who have been your favorite athletes and coaches and other people that you have got to interview over the years?
Hate that question too, because that's like choosing your favorite child. Like you just don't, even though you have one, you don't say it out loud without.
Well, hopefully we'll get you to say it.
No, in fear of making the others jealous. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I've been very fortunate. Everyone that I've worked with, I mean, truly, I'm not just saying that. I know that's a cliche answer, but everyone has been very, very good to me throughout my career. I mean, I would say anyone that gives genuine answers, because there's nothing more gratifying as a reporter than getting an answer that you're like, oh, yes, like, thank you. Now these fans, like, you're doing yourself the service of showing these fans who you are. But also anyone that says, that's a good question, Michelle. I love that. Don't you guys, that feeling when you ask a question and the athlete or the coach says, like, that's a really good question. And you're like, thank you. Thank you. I worked so hard on my questions.
Nick and I have had some joyful experiences here on the podcast because we've had guests on in the past who have not stopped the interview, but have taken time during the interview to say that Nick and I ask good questions. We had Tim Kirchin on. He was our first two-time guest. And through Tim Kirchin, in the Armenian connection, we had Armen Keteyian. And Armen Keteyian, when we did an interview with him, he stopped the interview and he told us mid-interview that these were some of the best questions that he had ever been asked in his career. And to us, that was an honor, considering somebody like that who has worked in the business for 30, 40 years and done stuff for both sports and world news and politics, and somebody who has the types of connections that he does. It's very rewarding. And I think people need to hear stuff like that. They need to hear, you ask good questions, or you're very prepared, or we enjoy the time spots that we have with you, or we see you, roaming the sidelines during the game. And once halftime comes around, we can feel comfortable, going up to you and knowing that you're going to ask good questions. I think people need to hear that more.
I agree. It's gratifying for sure.
So, I mean, you're going to give me the kid answer again, but it's fine. What were your favorite cities that you got to go to?
Oh, no, I can definitely answer this. So my favorite sleeper city, well, Toronto, it's not even a sleeper city. Toronto is just amazing. It's clean. It's beautiful. The people there are beautiful. There's good shopping. There's good food. It's just cool. I mean, Canada's cool, man. Don't tell Adnan that.
Well, obviously he'd rather be in America. I mean, he came down.
He is here. So Toronto is awesome. Sneaky good ballpark would be Kansas City, Kaufman. I didn't expect it to be as cool as it was. I've been very, very, very blessed that I've been to almost every single ballpark. I think there's a couple in the NL Central that I've not been to. But I would say Kansas City was my favorite sleeper ballpark.
Well, Arrowhead and Kaufman are both in the same complex, are they not? Are they?
No.
They're
Oh,
not.
complex. Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
I
so,
thought you meant like where the Raiders play, where it's literally on the same field, but no.
Right.
They are, yeah, parking lots. It's like Oracle Arena and
Right.
also I will say I like MLB's cities better than NBA's. That was another difference that I was like, man, I mean, some of them overlap, Denver, Phoenix, Chicago, but I would definitely say that MLB has better cities to visit.
All right. Last question, the most important question. When you were working these games, what was your go-to food from the press box?
Popcorn. I mean,
Right.
you don't get a lot of time to eat, that's for sure. And then you eat like tenfold on the plane. Popcorn. I don't like hot dogs. I know, unpopular opinion. I don't like hot dogs. I never ate meat at stadiums. It kind of grosses me out. So popcorn and cookies, anything that was free was for me.
Absolutely.
So you went with relatively safe snacks. That was the go-to.
Correct. And I would say that is my MO in life as well. Had nachos last night for dinner.
Nachos are great.
So that'll probably have to change at some point because my metabolism is not going to keep up. But I would say popcorn and cookies. I got very fortunate when I was with the Rockets because Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Rockets, also was very high up with all Landry properties, which, is McCormick and Schmick's and Mastro's and Morton's and Rainforest Cafe and all those yummy restaurants. So our catered plane flights were like next level. So it was almost better to just wait till we got on the plane after and have a steak than to have whatever was in the press box at the city that we were in.
Great stories. Great time. Had a really, really fun time. This was a blast to do. We thank you for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. Hopefully soon, Nick and we can get the rest of SNY and the Nightly crew to do this with us, and hopefully we can move on to their digital platforms. And hopefully once we do that, we could have a weekly segment here on our podcast. We'll call it On the Margaux. We'll have you on. How great is that, right? I know you like that immediately.
I am here for it.
Really, really appreciate you coming on. We always give the last words here to our guests. So if there's anything else that you would like to share, if there's anything else you'd like to promote, go right ahead. Floor is yours. Once again, congratulations on your engagement. We hope everything works out for you. We hope to have you on again in the future.
Thank you so much. I hope everything works out for me as well. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and it was a good time. You guys asked great questions. Oh my gosh. Nick, I want to know why you were just laughing when Joe started rapping now.
Because he's pitching, he's doing what you said. It's all about, it's just a funny guy. He wants us to get an SNY.TV. Maybe it's going to happen. We'll see what happens down the road. And Joe's just he's a funny guy. He's always staying hungry.
I love it. I see his shirt. Is that why? Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. That's going to do it here for this episode of I'm Right. For a very special guest who we thought was maybe had her face in a book all the time at the library, but she really doesn't. She's just a fan of Monica Lewinsky and one particular book. So that's going to do it here. So for Michelle Margaux, who's having a bad hair day, but you couldn't tell, and my co-host Joe Calabrese, this has been Nick Durst, and you have been listening to I'm Right.